Welcome into the Husker247 Podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruntz here on a Wednesday afternoon. Bruntz, it is June. That means we have officially hit recruiting season. This is where you get to talk.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to go beyond that. Yes, it is. It's official visit season. Battle of the Boneyard for the Boneyard. 7-on-7.
You think it's battle at the Boneyard?
At the Boneyard. That going on Friday. A big weekend over at Huddle with their event as well, and just a lot going on the first week of June, and a busy month where Nebraska's got to get some things done. That's basically where we're at as the calendar flips to June here.
Yeah, they have a big opportunity with a couple things going on in Lincoln this week, including their own official visit. I mean, this has sort of been a weird recruiting cycle. I don't really know what to make of it. I don't want to sound any alarms at this point. I don't think I plan to sound any alarms until we're maybe a little bit into July, just because I know it's not a big class. But there is a little bit of, like you used to watch football on, you would know this, your Broncos would be on CBS late in the afternoon when you weren't subjected to Chiefs coverage. But you would have the Broncos in a CBS doubleheader. And you know how you'd be getting back from commercial break at like 5:40, and there would be the preview would run, and Mike Wallace would come on, and they would talk about, and you'd have that ticking of the clock. You kind of feel the ticking a little bit. Like it's not quite go time that things have to be done for Nebraska football and recruiting, but the ticking is there, and it's time for them to kind of pick a few things up with their recruiting class. They have four commitments right now. Of their 4 commitments, their best commitment is visiting this upcoming weekend. We'll dive more into the official visits and all of that a little bit later. But CJ Brano has also visited Florida, will also visit Florida State. There's other programs that want to get involved there. Like it's a little bit shaky when the best player in your class is making other visits this month. And elsewhere in that class, you've got your lone in-state commitment so far. You've got your quarterback lined up, and then a wide receiver that you've talked with that is in a little bit of, it'd be fair to say, wait and see mode for how things go for him this month.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say. It's been an interesting cycle because, you had Nebraska have a fair amount of positional changeover with its coaching staff. Recruiting staff, there was a little bit of changeover there as well. You've kind of had the board reset a little bit. I think also, the ongoing questions are kind of the judicial do-si-do. Is that fair to say? With the House settlement and what your roster numbers actually look like, that's been odd for a lot of programs, and Nebraska certainly among them, because all spring it was, you got to cut down, you got to cut down, you got to cut down. And then it's, well, you might be able to grandfather some guys in, and that's just kind of where Nebraska is. It's going to be a small class anyways, as you mentioned. And, for the class, you're standing at 4, with some question about each of those guys almost, or at least 2 of the 4. And, you gotta add some talent here in June, or set yourself up well enough to get some of those decisions. It's like visit seasons in June. You get some decisions, and then you also get some decisions in July as well. Before
right around your favorite commitment holiday.
Yes. Yeah, that's basically what 4th of July has become, it feels like, is how many commitments and decisions can you fit into that one long weekend.
How many players can you think of have committed to Nebraska on the 4th?
Monte Harrison did. Freedom did. Unironically.
He let it ring.
Had nothing to do with the name. Lorenzo Stewart, who ended up not coming to Nebraska, I believe also committed around the 4th of July.
Might have been the 5th.
But yeah, I'm trying to think more recently who we've had.
Latrell Neville.
Yeah, he was the 4th of July. He's back in the portal, which is kind of wild to say. What other ones? Who else am I missing? There's been others.
I know, and Neville was the one that I remember. We had all of our ducks in a row, which I was thankful for. We know of at least one announcement that is set to be happening that weekend, as Darian Jones is, or it's weekend Friday. That Friday, Darian Jones is a July 4th announcement date. So if he's having a ceremony, I'm not promising Husker 24/7 will be there covering it, but we will have coverage, I'm sure, of Darian Jones' announcement. That's going to be an interesting recruitment as that plays out over the rest of this month. So we know there will be a lot happening in terms of recruiting going on, and so that's what we want to dive into with this podcast. But as I mentioned, some events happening this weekend. Let's touch on the Huddle thing before we get at Battle at the Boneyard. Give us the quick recap or quick synopsis of what this Huddle recruiting event is.
So it's called the Huddle's Futures Forum, and what they've done is they have invited a number of top recruits in primarily the 27 and 28 classes to come to Lincoln for basically Friday and Saturday. This is a Huddle event. Nebraska has no say in it. They're completely separate. It just happens that it's corresponding with this event is over the 7-on-7 tournament. There's going to be a little bit of overlap in terms of who's here for each of those events, but essentially it's let's bring together a number of top recruits. Let's talk about being a top recruit in terms of what that means for branding. It's a lot of like off the field stuff. It's branding, it's financial literacy stuff, it's networking with other high profile recruits as well. And they're just bringing them to Lincoln. The one overlap, I guess, is that Dylan Raiola is expected to be kind of the keynote speaker at that event, I believe on Friday. He's going to talk in the evening. And then on Saturday is most of the event. So it's the first time they've done this. It's interesting. And I think, a lot of those prospects would say like, well, why do I need to go to something like this? But it's a lot of the kind of off the field, open doors type stuff that you don't really get, the educational type piece of it. So it's an interesting event. I'm sure that you're going to see some of those guys end up over at Nebraska looking around. You're in Lincoln, so why not go over there and make a little unofficial visit? But a really nice list of 20 prospects that are coming in for that. Top 100, top 25 type guys in the 27 and 28 classes, some making return visits, guys who were here in the spring as well. So kind of eager to get some of the takeaways from those guys and their trips to Lincoln for that. But I mean, you just go down the list. Mark Matthews, who's a top 25 offensive tackle in 2027. Albert Simeon, a guard in the 27 class from Louisiana. He's the number 57 overall recruit in the country. He's making a return visit. Ahmad Houston out of Louisiana, tight end, number 18 in the class of 2027.
Yeah,
so
he was up here in the spring. I want to say came out for a visit for a practice.
Yep, another return visitor there. And so, a lot of these guys Nebraska's offered, as you would expect for guys that are that highly rated in future classes, but they're going to be in Lincoln for that. So kind of a cool event. We'll see if they continue it in the future. But Trey Taylor, of course, is going to be a part of that too, the 27 Nebraska quarterback commit who's been around all week, just kind of hanging out in Lincoln, being there for visits and things like that. So kind of a who's who getting together in Lincoln this weekend for that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Trey Taylor made his way over to the Battle at the Boneyard, where he could watch some talented teams and individuals playing in this 7-on-7 camp /tournament. Bruntz, this thing has a lot of potential. I'm fascinated how it's all going to come together. I'm fascinated what teams sort of look like. I mean, so the way the 7-on-7 thing sets up, I mean, you have these sort of teams where you have these large rosters. Not every player goes to every event. And so it's sort of fluid as to who will be out here. But I was combing through the, I believe it's NPA Dream Team and looking through some of the players. And I mean, if some of these guys come out and you're Trey Taylor, when you talk about peer recruiting, and there are some very good wide receivers that are expected to be on campus for Nebraska this weekend. And so the opportunity for a guy like Trey Taylor to be able to either introduce himself or kind of get to show off his campus, because that's what Nebraska effectively is once he committed in May. And that's how he sort of has been treating it. It's a really great peer recruiting opportunity that's sort of a rarity. And you got to see him last Sunday. And so, this is a guy that you watch camp. This is a guy that wants to be involved in the peer recruiting process. It's pretty cool that he's going to be back out here 2 weeks in a row coming over from Illinois.
Yeah, well, he never left. He's been
He's here all week then, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when you consider that he's been in the class for about a month, he certainly has kind of worn that peer recruiter hat. He's well connected through 7-on-7, knows a lot of guys nationally, very active on social media, as you've seen already. And, he's one of those guys that he's a coveted quarterback. He chose Nebraska. I think there's probably a little bit of intrigue about, why Nebraska, given the list that he was choosing from. So I think kind of having him there is going to be really big because, you and I had talked about this before that, Nebraska didn't really get the benefit of, in a recruiting class of having Dylan Raiola be like a long-term peer recruiter for you. He's been that way now. He's been very active in helping Nebraska get guys out of the portal. But I think when you have somebody that's kind of a known quarterback out there pounding the pavement for you as a coaching staff, that's a really big help. I mean, we've probably talked about this for as long as I've been doing this, but I mean, you get that kind of Pied Piper quarterback that there's a ton of value in helping you build a class and attracting other talent to potentially join that class. So I think it's it's been a positive for Nebraska that he's stuck around and just kind of, been in town to, just visit with guys as they're kind of coming through.
As someone that's going to be wandering over there on Friday, what are you sort of hoping to see as you're at this event? I know you covered 7-on-7s before. I know that you have been around, talented environments going back to satellite camps of yesteryear and everything else. So you've been around all of this. What are you hoping to see? What do you think will sort of stand out as you think about what Battle at the Boneyard could be on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, I think when coming from the Midwest, I mean, when you see a kind of concentration of talent, you kind of know it right away. I mean, even the Friday Night Lights camps that Nebraska had in the Riley era, I mean, you could tell there was a little bit, you could tell when there was like a different level of player that you were seeing at one of those things versus maybe what the norm is. And I'm looking for, a little buzz, a little competition. I mean, it's, first and foremost, it's a camp. I mean, there's going to be like teaching being done at this thing in the morning, and then there's going to be the tournament in the afternoon and the evening, culminating in the the finals in the stadium, which I think should be pretty cool. I'll be curious to see how many fans show up for it. I mean, Nebraska's trying to get fans to turn out for this thing.
Completely free. If you're listening to this and you're interested, you do not have to pay anything. I believe there's talk of having concessions and things like that available, and so
$500 get a T-shirt, I believe.
Yeah.
So
get yourself some gear.
Yeah. So they want there to be a little bit of buzz around this, and maybe there will be. But I think when you look at the amount of talent that could potentially be there, it's going to be pretty unique. I mean, I've heard from a couple folks in the recruiting world kind of asking like how Nebraska's doing this and thinking that Nebraska kind of got its foot in the door first on this kind of an event. And so I think a lot of people around the country also who are in that space are kind of looking at this event to see what it's going to be, see who shows up for it. And this is an opportunity for Nebraska to kind of set the bar a little bit and what these kind of events can be. Because I think you'll see some copycats next year. I have zero doubt about that. But I mean, this is Nebraska really trying to put itself out there a little bit and, be aggressive with this kind of thing and figure out a way to, really sell itself to top level recruits.
The thing is, if you have a good experience here and you get on the radar with Nebraska, you get recruited, maybe someday down the line, you can be part of an official visit weekend like Nebraska has coming up here. They're going to have 10 visitors, 9 of them uncommitted to Nebraska. One of them, CJ Brano, committed. And I mentioned him earlier. This is a defensive back that John Butler identified last year that sort of plucked from obscurity. I remember when I was first asking around about him, he was described that he lives in a community that is substantially more known for producing professional golfers or collegiate golfers or golfers in general than people who know how to play football. So there was a lot of doubt initially. And then people noticed he could run. And not only could he run, he's 6'2". And not only is he 6'2" and can run, he can get his hand and put it directly in front of a ball that is thrown downfield. And not only can he do that, he can pick it off and then turn it around and run it back, potentially for touchdowns or for major yardage. He had a big junior year. The film looked good. And then he went and blew up on the camp scene. And I know just from talking with Andrew Ivins, this is someone that he sort of liked the film, but was doubting the competition wasn't the best. So he wanted to see what he looked like up close. I remember hearing from Ivins right after the first performance at a camp. And he's like, this guy is going to be a dude. And Nebraska's going to have to fight everybody off for him. And here we are in June. He just took the OV to Florida. Florida thinks they're in the catbird seat despite not having the commitment. There's a lot of smoke around the idea that Florida wants this commitment, thinks they can get this commitment. Nebraska is going to be fighting that off, but they're also going to be fighting off Florida State, which rolled in, during the visit periods in January and in May. Florida State was showing up with Evan Cooper and Tony White and Terrence Knighton and some other. John Papuchis, I think, was involved at one point in time.
Yeah.
There's just a bunch of ex-Nebraska assistant coaches going out there recruiting a Nebraska commit. So that was sort of humorous to me. Penn State dropped out of the running for Brownow, but Michigan and Miami have shown a lot more interest as well. So this may not have like an end date to it. Like this recruitment might go for a while. And it's just one of those where Nebraska has their opportunity to show off with an official visit. They really need to kind of take advantage of that. I think of the 10 guys coming in this weekend, he is the most important. But it is a big weekend. There's a lot of talent. Bruntz, when you look at that list, who's someone else that sort of stands out for you coming out here for the June 6th visit weekend?
Yeah, it kind of pops, when you just look at the list of the number of offensive linemen that are coming in this weekend. Like, this is a really important weekend for kind of what Nebraska's future lines could be. You've got Rex Waterman out of Arizona, who's been here before, very familiar. Ryan Merritt out of Miami, who has a decision date set. Miami is involved there pretty heavily as well. Hayden Ainsworth out of Biloxi, Mississippi, who has some ties to Nebraska as well. And then Kelvin, is it Obo? Help me out.
I believe it is Kelvin O. I've been saying Obut.
Okay.
Like Obut, but it could be Obo. I mean, I honestly,
yeah.
Pronunciations of the name changes regardless of whether it comes directly from the kid or somebody else. So you never know.
So he's, a top 150 prospect, offensive tackle. He's been here before. So, you've got the return visit thing working here with a lot of these guys. And I think that's always that feels like a big deal to me whenever you get the return visit as an official. So
I think every one of them have been out here before.
yes,
Even Hayden Gainsworth, I believe, has been out here before.
yep. So it feels like a big weekend up front for Nebraska. Like when you look at the other visit weekends, yes, they've got offensive linemen coming in other weekends and things like that, but these are all guys that Matt Rule went around and saw when he could back in the winter. And I think that this is a weekend where Nebraska has a chance to really kind of put its best foot forward here.
A couple guys coming out from California that are intriguing at two different positions on offense. Brian Bonner. Nebraska has hung around in this recruitment way longer than I thought they would. This is a guy that Tony White, I think, was instrumental in sort of opening the door, and then the rest of Nebraska's staff has done a really nice job there. He would be, to me, the biggest running back get that they could get in this class. Very fast, 6 foot, nearly 6'1", 185, so you definitely put some weight on that frame. And it would be a big recruiting win at running back, and you have to beat out some schools out west to kind of be able to do it. I'm pretty skeptical, but it's their opportunity. So they gotta kind of hit a home run there. We'll see how that one goes. And then the other one, Luke Sorensen, we've spent a lot of time talking about tight ends in this class. I think Nebraska felt like they had a pretty enviable position where they had a bunch of targets that they really liked, and they just had to whittle it down, and they were going to feel good about whoever they ended up with. Well, funny thing happened. Those targets have started committing elsewhere, and that list is getting a little smaller. Nebraska is one of two schools for Luke Sorensen. It is very much a Penn State versus Nebraska battle. Nebraska gets a visit this weekend, Penn State the next weekend. That's tough. Penn State has history at that position that's better than Nebraska. Penn State played in the college football semifinal. But I think the relationship that Nebraska has built is really strong. This one is going to be pretty fascinating. The crystal ball is in for Penn State at the moment, but I think Nebraska has a chance, a fair chance with Luke Sorensen. He really has spoken highly of Nebraska when I've talked to him in the past. This is someone who has, I don't know that he has direct ties or anything to the state, but he has an awareness of the history and of the program that goes beyond just sort of looking at a Wikipedia page or, whatever it is. I think he's got some family members that maybe grew up rooting for Nebraska a little bit. So there's some things there that potentially could help out with a really intriguing tight end prospect. There's another guy that on this list, Bruntz, said I think Nebraska is a real dark horse for, and that would be Cameron Wilson, who's committed to Syracuse. Defensive lineman. The Huskers have been recruiting him pretty hard. He's got a great relationship with Phil Simpson. He actually is teammates with Brian Merritt, who mentioned earlier, the offensive lineman. They both played for Miami Southridge. Phil Simpson used to be an assistant coach at Miami Southridge way back when. He's good friends with Brian Merritt's dad, actually. So there's just a lot of connection here. But the big takeaway is Cameron Wilson did a whole visit tour in the spring. He committed to Syracuse, but then he kept taking visits. Nebraska blew him away. If you go look at the quotes, and he said it a couple different times in a couple different places, he has not stopped talking about how great the facilities were and the people and how much he liked it. And now he's coming out for that official visit weekend. I think they have to set the bar really high here. I'd be surprised if Cameron Wilson stays committed to Syracuse, because I think Florida State's the other team to kind of keep an eye on here. But I think Nebraska has a chance to pull a kid out of Miami. I think the connections with Phil Simpson are going to be strong, and I would be shocked, Bruntz, if they don't get him around guys like Vincent Shavers and Willis McGahee and other ones from that area. And as he has a good weekend, if I could bet on any one thing, it would be an excited Cameron Wilson when I get to talk to him on Sunday afternoon. I anticipate he is going to have a good visit weekend out here in Lincoln.
A lot of old friend battles here in this class. A lot of Florida State, Nebraska, Donnie Brooks early on here.
Yeah. It is funny how it kind of works out like that. Other people we haven't mentioned yet. Kason Thomas coming over from Iowa, linebacker at Bishop Heelan up there in Sioux City. He's a quiet kid. Doesn't do interviews, doesn't talk a lot. Heard a lot of Iowa State for him. I think Nebraska's running a pretty heavy third at this point in time, so they're going to have to do some work there. Someone I have no feel for, and I think we've largely kind of talked about the whole list here, would be Cameron Heimel. I think that's how you'd pronounce it, out of Goodyear, Arizona. Another defensive back. Nebraska has a lot of defensive backs that like Addison Williams. I think he's pretty he's put in a lot of work building out his board and talking with a lot of different guys. And so now it's time to sort of cut through it and figure out who you can get and go from there. So it's a pretty good weekend all in all here in Lincoln for Nebraska.
Yeah, it's a busy June, like we said. This kind of kicks it off, and I think it feels like there's going to be a lot of moving pieces this month. I mean, we've already seen the random pop-ins for midweek visits, things like that, as guys kind of try to fit things in to June. Because I mean, that's kind of the challenge. I think that's kind of popped up a little bit with, basically condensing most of your official visits to 1 month. Is it's like, okay, you get a school that comes in kind of late and shows some interest, or a new school, or things change, or a guy commits and takes your spot. You gotta be flexible, and you gotta be able to fit in those midweeks. I mean, you had Larry Miles, a wide receiver from Florida, pop into Lincoln on Monday on the way back from a trip to Oregon. I mean, that's just kind of the way the month goes. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a really, really busy, interesting month with Nebraska recruiting here.
Here's how fluid recruiting is right now. As we started this podcast, Cameron Heimel was coming out to Nebraska. And in the time of this podcast, he's since committed to Texas A&M and has shut down the process. So, frankly, I didn't even need to talk about him. Had I checked Twitter just 8 minutes ago, I'd have been on the forefront of this news. But that's recruiting in June. That's also, Bruntz, I think there's a lesson that's going to come out of all of this for Nebraska, and it's if they cannot stack as many visits as they have in June and survive this, or they're going to have to be better on the front end. They have lost a lot of targets that have committed to other schools leading up to June that they will not get official visits from. We'll see if they can get them on campus otherwise, if shutting down the process remains to be true for a lot of these guys. But this cycle, more than others, it feels like Nebraska is just sort of like on the sidelines watching things as it happens. And I keep wondering when they're going to get in the game. So it is it's cutthroat out there. We'll see. Normally when you have that level of scarcity, you're going to take a small class. It works in your favor. That has not necessarily happened here in the 2026 cycle.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's there's a lot of work to be done.
A lot of work to be done for them. A lot of work to be done for us at Husker247.com. Be sure to check out everything we have going on. Plenty of recruiting coverage. All of the sports seasons are now finished. We could talk about that game Nebraska baseball played on Sunday, but I don't know that we have time in our show or listeners that want to recap the 17-1. Sorry. Tried to give him a little too much credit there. But if you did want to know more about Nebraska baseball, what the future holds for Will Bolt's boys, and who's already jumped into the transfer portal, I bet you could find that at Husker247.com, where Michael Bruntz does a great job covering the Nebraska baseball team. Of course, Brian Christopherson has been whipping up plenty of content. He ran through a drive from the Wisconsin game that Matt Rule happened to be talking about the other day, and it made me stop and think about that drive and just how excited I am for the Dana Holgerson experience that we have coming here in the 2025 season. So if you want that kind of content, get over to Husker247.com. And of course, we'll have plenty of recruiting content, plenty of recruiting coverage from the Huddle Symposium, from the Battle at the Boneyard, from the official visit weekend, from the camps that are going to be coming next week and the week after. Friday Night Lights camp next Friday. So you got Battle at the Boneyard this week, Friday Night Lights next week. Plenty going on, official visitors all throughout, unofficial visitors popping in, offers flying off the handle. There's just going to be a lot happening, and Husker 24/7 is a spot where you want to be. So for Michael Bruntz, I am Mike Schaefer. We appreciate you checking us out here at the Husker 24/7 podcast. We'll catch you next time.